students that weren't able to come to a class, and they're like, can you just film the steps for me, because reading it is just too confusing, and you just make it clear, and I want to just follow your instructions more than the book.
Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
And our guest today is Rachel Miller from Journey Back Quilts. And tell us a little bit about how you started quilting and when you decided to make it a business.
Yeah, sure. So my grandma, she was learning how to quilt when I was a young teenager, and she wintered in Arizona. I live in Wyoming. So when she came back to Wyoming for the summers, she needed an excuse to get all of us girls together. So she has 3 daughters. One's my mom. And then I have 2 sisters and 2 girl cousins. And so for an excuse to get together, she's like, I'm going to teach you a new quilt block every week. So we got together and we'd have snacks and we'd visit, and we had 4 sewing machines and 1 ironing board to share between 9 women. It was insane. So being a young teenager, I was around 13, 14, I was really impatient. And so when I got my turn, I just zoomed through it as fast as I could. And there was always mistakes. Of course, the machine came unthreaded or something happened and I didn't know how to fix it. So it was very frustrating to me. So I hated the craft, but I loved hanging out with people. So several years later, I met my husband and we were planning our wedding. It was 2005. And was it 5 months? Yeah, 5 months before our wedding, my face went paralyzed. I had Bell's palsy.
Oh, no.
And it just completely went paralyzed. I looked like I had a stroke. And so I had to quit everything. I had to quit work and just stay home and rest. Well, I'm not one to rest well. I like to stay busy. And my mom knew this. So she's like, why don't you use my brand new Janome sewing machine and make a quilt? Knowing how crazy I was with it, she was very brave. So I cut up all my old jeans and I made a rag quilt with it. And it didn't turn out perfect, but I was like, it passed the time. It was good. So I still didn't love it yet. And then fast forward several more years, we had our babies and my mom gifted me a little brother sewing machine for Christmas. And I'm like, thanks, Mom. You know how much I love sewing. Like, this is going to sit in my closet. I'm never going to do anything with it. So she convinced me that I should make a quilt for my oldest son. He was turning 3. And I thought, well, he's getting his big boy bed, so I'm going to make him a rag quilt too, just something easy. Well, I made it and I went to clip everything and I clipped through several of my seams, like more than several. And I was like, Mom, I still don't love this. Why are you making me do this? So she took it, she fixed it for me. Well, my daughter's just a year younger than my son, so I had to make her one. Everything has to be fair. And something clicked when I was making her quilt. I just fell in love with the process. And I found how relaxing it can be and how creative I actually was. I grew up thinking I was never creative. So this just sparked a whole new thing in me. And then after that, friends just kept asking me, can you make me a quilt? Can you make me a quilt? And then they'd pass the news along to their friends that I make quilts. And pretty soon I had to start a business because I was serving more strangers than I was friends. So in 2017, I officially became Journey Back Quilts and bought a Longarm machine, and it just continued to develop from there. So backing up just a little bit, after making all these quilts for all my friends, the strangers who kept asking me to make quilts were asking for memory quilts. So my very first memory quilt was a bridesmaid's dress. I was scared to death to cut this thing apart and put it back together in a quilt. And I didn't know how to free motion quilt yet. I didn't know how to do anything like that. So I put this thing together and it turned out beautifully. And I was like, wow, I think I like this. And so people kept bringing me more memory quilts, more t-shirts and baby clothes and all these memory things. So I've made memory clothes or clothes quilts out of pretty much anything you can imagine.
Wow.
So that was kind of the beginnings of Journey Back Quilts and kind of how the name developed too. During this time, my health wasn't so great. I had several back surgeries, and then my husband had a dramatic injury where he had a very bad back injury and head injury, and so God kind of just brought us this business at a perfect time where we needed that extra income, but I could work from home. We were also homeschooling our kids. And so I was able to kind of juggle being caretaker, homeschooler, and business owner at the same time.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
you've done well with it. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. So I was really curious about, because I know that you do your own pattern design and you teach Lori Holt patterns. Is that right?
Yes.
So I was wondering, how is it just working with another person's or another designer's patterns and being able to teach those?
Lori Holt is a very fabulous and very popular quilt designer and pattern maker and all the things. So selling her patterns or helping teach her patterns has been in a way easier because she's already well known and people want to do her quilts. And so just jumping into that world with them to help them with putting those pieces together. And her blocks are really fun. They have more of a traditional feel to them, but they're very fun and quirky and stuff like that. So some people get intimidated by that when they first see it, but then I help walk them through step by step how to put the quilt block together. So it helps it be easier for them.
Can you describe a little bit for our listeners who can't or who haven't heard of Lori Holt? Can you describe kind of the themes around her quilts that you teach?
Yeah. So a lot of her quilts are vintage. Most of her quilts are vintage. And so Journey Back kind of fits in that with vintage quilts. So she's making very traditional styled quilts, but taking you back into like that 1930s style with the fabrics. And a lot of them are farmhouse themed, which I just love. So she has her vintage or Farm Girl vintage book, and then she made a second book, and then she has a vintage Christmas book, and she has lots of other vintagey type quilts patterns out there.
Yeah, I love working with her patterns because they do incorporate some of the traditional piecing techniques and units. And even though she calls it vintage, they always look fresh and fun. So congrats on getting that together. Can you talk a little bit about how those quilt-alongs have developed and grown over the years? Because I know you've offered them for several rounds now.
Yeah. So I started teaching quilting in 2018. I was teaching out of my home, and this was post or pre-COVID, and so I would have several different groups of classes come in, and we could learn a different quilt block. And we were actually doing Eleanor Burns' Underground Railroad quilt, and so that kind of inspired me to find other patterns. And one of my students in that class actually brought Lori Holt's pattern to me, and she was like, "Can we do this one next?" And well, while I was doing that, there was occasionally students that weren't able to come to a class, and they're like, "Can you just film the steps for me? Because reading it is just too confusing, and you just make it clear, and I want to just follow your instructions more than the book." And so I was like, okay, I've never filmed myself before, so let me figure this out. And so I figured it out, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this Farm Girl vintage book because this is what my students asked for. And I started filming them and getting them ready to go. The 1st of January was when it launched, and didn't even know that COVID was around the corner. So it was just perfect timing to have this online course ready to go. And yeah, so we've been doing that since 2020, and it's still alive and growing. We have new farm girls join us every quarter or so. And then I walk them through the books. It is a DIY type class, so they can do it at their own time, their own pace. They don't have to schedule it around, there's no Zoom call to have to schedule it around their lives or anything like that. So they can just sit and sew whenever they want to.
That's awesome. I'm encouraged that you were moving that direction before the world upended and jumped on Zoom. So you already had some experience. You were well positioned for that. I'm sure our listeners will be interested in the different components of your business, because you've mentioned classes, you've mentioned, making quilts for people. What do you see as the current mix of different offerings and the profitability? I mean, we don't need to get into deep numbers, but is there some of it that's just because you love it and it doesn't make that much money, but you really need to spend time on another aspect?
Yeah, so I do have about 4 different revenues that come in for this business. One is the custom quilts. I still make a lot of memory quilts. Second is long arming services. So I do custom and edge-to-edge long arming. And then the classes, of course. And then I also have a small growing online store. So we have fabric and notions and thread and patterns and batting and all the things that you might need. So the memory quilts are still one of my highest revenue. I keep thinking this is time to let this one go and let's focus more on the classes, but it is still one of my highest revenues. So I keep doing it, and I actually have several helpers that help me do it now. So I'm not having to stretch myself too far getting everything done, but I definitely have my hand in the mix of creating them and designing them and everything. And then I have people who piece them and do the binding and stuff for me. So that's really helpful. But
yeah, that's great that you have a team to help.
Yeah, it is. It's such a blessing. The second biggest revenue are classes and long arming. They're kind of in a tie. So
following up on both of those items, first with your long arm, you said you do custom. So that I'm here in imagining is hand guided. Do you have a computer system that you can kind of run hands off a little bit so it gives you time to multitask?
Yes. Yep. Okay. And that's my favorite, is that I can have that going at the same time as I'm working on another project. But the custom stuff is so fun that I can't, that's one thing I can't let go of, that I probably should let go of, but I love doing it. And so yeah, I try to squeeze that in where I can, and then get all those edge to edge done really quickly. So
right. It does help to have a mix, because I know there are as a hand guided long armor myself, it's I totally understand. There's some people that they just want it done, so the edge to edge is perfect for them. But then when you find those really special quilts that you can bring to life with your custom design, that's very fulfilling.
So fun. Yes.
Good. And then you were mentioning classes, and I know when you were talking about your Lori Holt classes, you said they are self-paced, so people can work through the pattern at their own speed. Do you have a variety where some are more in-person set timing and then some are self-paced, or are the classes all recorded and evergreen and people can access them at any time?
I have another eclectic of everything. So I do have several DIY type classes, one for a log cabin class, and one is a t-shirt quilt class, of course, and then the Farm Girl Vintage and Stars and Stripes quilt class. That one's really fun for 4th of July, and a pumpkin squared tabletopper class. That one just finished this last August. And that one's also by Lori Holt. So it's really fun. So those are the kind of DIY classes. Those are ones that people can pick and choose when they're open. And then I do in-person classes every once in a while in my local quilt shop, and around Wyoming. I'll travel up to Sheridan sometimes and do classes in Riverton and other places. So I love doing the in-person classes, because to be able to see their faces light up and see the progress that they make and be able to troubleshoot and help them right away. So I try to incorporate that into my DIY videos as well, so that I'm in their brain while I'm trying to film and edit all these classes for them. And then we do have a membership called the Society, and it's spelled SEW, of course, so that they can get more time with me. We do once a month guild meetings together. There's also a free guild meeting that we do once a month in the fall and winter months. We're off for the summer, but we'll be back in September. And that's really fun to be able to see each other's projects and encourage each other. Even though we're in front of a computer, we can meet other quilters from all around the world.
Yeah, that is the best part, I think, is the show and tell, and like you said, the community, and especially when it gets to be an international community. It's really, quilting brings us all together, and that's a wonderful aspect of the craft. So that's great. How often are you trying to develop a new class or a new offering? Do you have ideas in your head that you want to get out, or are you just kind of waiting for your audience to give you that feedback and ask for something new?
As quilters, I think we always have another idea up next. Like, we're excited for the next thing. That's why we have so many UFOs in our closet, because we're so excited for the next thing. So I have to be diligent in going, I have to finish this first. So I do have some ideas coming up, but I do try to get the feedback, at least of my members, to see where they're at and what they would like to do next. I'm looking to have guest instructors join us in the next year and see if we can get some new techniques under our belt that way. And that way I can continue to grow my quilting skills as well.
That's awesome. Good. Good to know that there, like you said, we never have a shortage of ideas on our own, but it's important to listen to your community. It sounds like you've been able to build a great group that keeps coming back for more. So that's what we like, what we like to hear. As you've been building your business, who or where did you find your information and guidance and support? Is your family helping you in terms of, do you come from a business family that has that entrepreneurial spirit, or are you learning as you go, and where do you find that education?
Yeah, a little bit of both. My dad does own his own construction business, and has since I was a little child. So I think it's partly in my blood, but I definitely had a lot to learn. So I have taken lots and lots of different courses from people like Shannon Brinkley and Stu McLaren and Amy Porterfield. And then I joined a mastermind with Katie Horner, her Queen's Mastermind, and that has really helped propel me through to where I am now. And she has a coaching group called Flamboyance too. Everything's around flamingos, and so it's really fun. And I'm the only quilting business in that group, but just having that business knowledge really helps me to be able to implement it to help my clients and my students as well.
Yeah, I found a YouTube business coach, and again, there's a wide range of industries in there, but some of those core business principles do carry over. So it's important to not get yourself stuck into the, that won't work because it's not quilt based. Everybody has good lessons to offer us. So those are great resources that we'll be sure to include for our audience as well. We are always interested in what your different marketing efforts have been like and where you have found to be successful and not so great. We know social media can be a time suck. So how do you juggle all of that in terms of getting your message out there and reaching new people?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a time suck. And this year I have finally hired a VA to help me with my social media. And that has been the biggest blessing of all. So I have time to spend with my students and to develop courses and stuff for them. But I have helped her by mapping out a calendar or a plan for which posts go when and where and how often. And she creates graphics for that and puts those out every week. And so that's helped like this much. The biggest thing I think is my email list. So getting people onto my email list, that's been the biggest thing, to have interaction with them and to be able to communicate better, because social media it's so busy and people are so you just flip through it. I know I do the same thing. You're just on there and you're just flip, 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 flip. And so it's hard to get people to stop and really watch the video or watch or read the text or anything like that to get their attention. So I do put out a Facebook ad once a month or so to get people to come to the free guild meeting or to give some attention to the class that's open for that week or whatever. So that seems to help. And it doesn't really give me the sales like I thought it would, but it's helping grow my email list. So that's what I use those Facebook ads for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would,
I'm just now starting to dabble in boosted posts, which is kind of that first step before you get into more specific ads. And yeah, because it's scary to put the money out there and wonder if you're going to actually get a return on your investment. But
right.
Yeah, that is one aspect of business life, is you do have to spend money sometimes to make money.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's how it works. And sometimes you lose and sometimes you win. And it really depends on the season, and it can depend on the market. It can depend on what Facebook's doing at the time. Like everything changes constantly. So I'm learning to be better about tracking my numbers and have a spreadsheet for all this. I have, spreadsheets are your friend. They really help you kind of keep track of where things are and how much you spent, how much your reach was, all those kinds of things. So, but it takes time and practice too. And it is nerve-wracking because you're putting your own income into that.
And it really helps me to, constant reminder that the numbers are just a snapshot. It's a data point. It is not, a measure of your self-worth or anything, just data.
You almost have to think of it like a game. Like this month is what I did this month. And next month I'm going to try to beat that level and see if I can get it better or whatever. So, and it's just little tweaks, little tiny tweaks, like just add in one little keyword of, who your audience might be or whatever. And it tweaks it ginormously. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are, those analytics, those reports that you may be scared of looking at are there to help, and they have some wonderful information. And so once you dig into that, it can really give you some great information, because we want to do more of what's working. So it sounds like you have found a pathway to success. What do you have coming up in the next 3 to 6 months that you'd like our audience to know about?
I think the biggest thing is join my free guild and join us once a month. It's usually the first Thursday of every month. And we just meet for about an hour or so. And there's usually prizes involved, and they can show and tell what they've brought, or they can just come hang out and see what everything's about. And there I can give them more information about my classes or whatever. we do have freebies and stuff for, patterns and things like that. So you can always check those out at my website at journeybackquilts.com.
Awesome, Rachel. That's wonderful. And I'm assuming your Journey Back Quilts on all the social media places.
Yes.
So
Yep.
whether
Yep.
people are on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the flavor of
Yep.
the day is.
Yep. YouTube and Pinterest, all those things too.
I'm always fascinated to hear about other people's mix of products and types of quilting. I tend to run screaming if someone asks me about t-shirt quilts, but sounds like it's a good avenue for you.
Yeah, and that's what I usually hear too, is like other quilters are like, no, I will never do one of those again. And I'm like, I must have found the secret sauce because I think they're really ezy. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess they're more labor intensive, and I've done a few that I put together myself, and then my most faithful Longarm customer brought me one, and I'm always nervous as a long armor because if they're not secured well, you get lots of puckers and the quilting just looks bad. But hers were perfectly flat, and
nice,
worked out. So
good.
I'm not quite so terrified of that now,
right.
but they still, I'd rather just work with quilting cotton and
definitely
traditional.
They're not as pretty for sure. And so doing too many at a time, I get burned out really quickly. And so I have to throw in a pretty quilt once in a while so that I can decompress from all those.
Okay. So rapid fire, Rachel, what is your favorite color?
Purple and teal. Yep.
And do those show up in your quilts?
Teal often, several different shades of teal seem to show up in a lot of my quilts, but purple not as much. Well, no, I can't say that. I did make a couple purple quilts. So yep.
Our next question is yardage or pre-cuts?
It depends on what I'm doing, what kind of a project I'm doing. So with my classes, I do a lot of pre-cut type kits and things for them. So it just depends on what we're doing.
Awesome. Do you have any hobbies besides quilting?
I dabble in a lot of things. So yes, I like to garden. I like to read. I like to crochet and cross stitch and embroider and all the things. So I love trying new things and playing with different toys, So yeah.
What is your favorite notion?
I don't know if I could pick a favorite for that either, but lately I've been loving the diagonal seam tape, and I always have a thread cutter for chain piecing by my sewing machine. So I love the new ones that are the blade saver thread cutters where you put your old rotary blade in there. I love that it's kind of a upcycle kind of thing too. So.
And is your thread cutter purple?
No, it's actually blue. So, yeah. Oh, actually, no. I lied. I have a blue thread cutter and a purple thread cutter. So yeah.
Good. You've got it covered.
Yep.
And now we have our last question. Who is inspiring you right now?
Oh, I have several answers for that too. So Elise Bake, she does English paper piecing, and she is blowing up. I am amazed at how fast her group is growing and what she's doing in there and stuff. It's so much fun. She's just a fun personality to hang out with her YouTube videos and her lives and her classes and stuff. So she would be one. Varushka with Pride and Joy. She is amazing and just inspiring with all her quilt designs, and just love all the colors and stuff that she puts together. And then Karen Brown in Canada with Just Get It Done Quilts is so much fun to watch on YouTube. When I just need to zone out and just relax, she is my go-to to watch her videos. So
such great choices. I can't wait to explore and learn more about all of those people. So
fun.
Well, I wish you continued success, and
Thanks,
we
and you
will,
guys as well.
thanks. Yeah, we're having fun with this. What a great conversation with Rachel from Journey Back Quilting. What was your biggest takeaway, Tori?
My biggest takeaway was probably her. Oh, I have a couple, but I think the biggest one was probably her resilience. The way she faced so many ups and downs, and she shaped this business to where it could follow her and what she needed to be able to do, and just overcoming each struggle. I thought that was really inspiring.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of entrepreneurship and working for yourself is you have the flexibility to pivot and change and adapt and still provide for your family. So that is very encouraging.
What was your biggest takeaway, Andy?
When I listened to Rachel's story, I was really inspired by the way she listens to her audience to develop the next step for her business with the quilt-alongs and the classes. She's always making sure that she's putting something in the marketplace that her audience is asking for. And that's a good lesson for me to remember because I'm more like the person who just thinks that, well, if I like it, then there's got to be someone else out there that likes it instead of doing that market research that's so important. So I need to definitely take note of that lesson.
Definitely, me too. I've been focusing more on figuring out what my audience needs and really going in that direction rather than where I think they should go.
Yeah, sometimes we may be a couple steps ahead and we need to slow down and give them the one next thing rather than the final end product.
For
Lead
sure.
the customer on their journey and walk alongside them. So good reminders.
Yeah.
And if you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.